Hey all, welcome to a Talking Tropes mini. Today we're going to talk to you about season 2 of the Umbrella Academy. I'm Hannah.
I'm David. This one, kind of a little late. We try to come in right away with our minis, but since this show came out while we were on hiatus, we thought we would still want to give you our take on what
Yeah,
is one of my favorite Netflix originals. I don't know
yeah.
about you, Hannah.
Oh, I definitely agree. It's one of the more exciting Netflix originals that is still alive right now because there have been many in the past, but they are all now deceased or have gone on too
Right.
long and are basically deceased.
Right. For those of you who haven't seen Umbrella Academy, we'll give a brief introduction before we jump into spoilers. This is a
But it's going to
show.
be all spoilers.
It's going to be all spoilers for seasons 1 and 2.
Yeah.
So, check it out. The show is about a family of X-Men like superheroes who were
Yes.
all born on the same day and
See behind
adopted
me.
by a sadistic madman who wanted to train them to save the world from the apocalypse, which is exactly what they try to do a
Several
lot.
times.
Um, a comparison that I haven't seen a lot of people make is that I think this show is like supernatural but good and for a
Yeah.
broader audience.
Yeah.
So if you like supernatural but like want it to be maybe
Actually gay.
a little more actually gay, a little bit more off the walls, a little more talking chimpanzee.
Yeah, a little
Um,
bit more tongue in cheek.
right. But also
Like
with a
it's
lot more grounded character bits that I think are more,
yeah.
true to life maybe. I
I
don't
mean
know.
it's based off of a graphic novel, like comic book written by Gerard Way. So like there are some elements to it that are like very like MCR, like scene kid from middle school 2007 like
Right.
aspects to it.
But at the same time, very upbeat and
Yeah.
fun.
Oh, 100%.
I don't ever feel depressed when I'm watching this
No,
show.
it's not like emo, like it doesn't have like a
No.
negative worldview. It just has like
Well,
a
maybe it
kind
does have a
it's
negative
got
world.
a, I would say it has a cynical worldview. I don't think it
Okay.
has a negative worldview.
All right.
And I
Well,
think there's a difference.
let's get right into it. A lot of people have talked about this show and have done a lot of explained videos, so we want to step away from the recapping of season 2 and
Yeah.
just talk about how we reacted to it, and
Yeah.
especially the ways in which season 2 to me feels like let's do everything that worked from season 1 again, but kind of just turn up the notch from 10 to 11,
Yeah.
and whether that works and whether it doesn't. So
Yeah.
let's get to it. Do you want to like go character by character or something?
Sure. I mean, we could start with just like our big takeaways from it, like my big takeaway. So like first of all, I watched this season in literally like one afternoon tonight. Like literally turned it on at 4 o'clock, did not stop watching until it was like 2 a.m. and I had finished all 10 episodes. So like the ultimate definition of just like a binge show. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that um, this season is just littered with cliffhangers. Like
Right,
every episode, the status quo has shifted so immensely in some way that
right. I mean,
you have to just know what's
season
gonna
one
happen next.
definitely felt like there were a lot of cliffhangers, but it was a
Yeah,
lot of like running on a treadmill in place, especially since we had this one location that we kept returning to, and it
right,
always
and
felt like we've never gotten any further in solving what causes the apocalypse.
right, like there's two. It's sort of like two big mysteries that we're trying to solve in season 1. There's the supposed murder of their father, which is what brings them all together. It's his death, and one of them thinks he was murdered, and then we're trying to figure out if that was true or not. And there's drama and intrigue there. Um, and then there's also the like what's going to cause the apocalypse mystery that they're trying to solve simultaneously and trying to figure out if they're connected at all. And then, other
Right.
character stuff that is involved in both of those plots.
And I mean, like
Um,
Hargreaves's murder is kind of a red herring which plays into the main plot, but just, the fact that like the first half of the season is dedicated to that, and it doesn't really pan out to anything other than what we already knew it accomplished, which is bringing the characters together, is it's different from season 2, where everything has its own little mini payoff, as opposed to the larger mysteries being developed for the larger part of the season.
Totally. I agree with that. But like it's interesting because the show ends on like this major cliffhanger, definitely. But it because it's so like status altering that it's almost like a more vague sense of like what the stakes are going to be moving forward.
As compared to the other cliffhangers within the season.
Yeah, which like literally I was like, I cannot wait. And I thought several times, I'm like, this has to be the last episode. Like this has to be the cliffhanger they're gonna leave us on, because this is making me want season 3 now. But then I got to be thrilled and discover that there was another episode. But the last cliffhanger is still like very good and very like status quo altering for sure. But it's again, it's like the characters in season 1, we're being introduced to them, and then it's a lot of laying out conflicts and interpersonal dramas between them that get a ton of payoff in season 2. So they've sort of reached this like equilibrium almost, like not a full resolution necessarily, but like they've reached some kind of like stillness to the water, and then the cliffhanger at the end of the season is like a pebble thrown into that pond that I'm sure is going to cause a ton of shit to go quite awry.
Yeah, I've seen some reviews of season 2 and season 1 of this show, where basically the premise is like everything is so apocalyptic and so impactful, and yet it never really does like change the status quo that much beyond repair, that it almost like, it's like, what are the stakes to anything really if the apocalypse is not actually the end of the world? Like,
right.
And if all this time travel exists, like how is there tension in any, negative thing that happens which can be undone, which I think is a problem with a lot of time travel. I never do really feel that way when I'm in it. Maybe it's just the musical choices. I don't know. But like
the musical choices in the show are incredible.
And the dance numbers. We all knew there was going to be dance numbers after season 1, had a lot of dance numbers.
Gotta have the dance numbers. What's the point otherwise?
But I want to jump into the character arcs and talk about the way that this season like consciously tries to reset and reassess the character arcs, even some of those that I think were kind of resolved in season 1. So let's just go by numbers, if we can remember what the numbers are.
Okay, we'll start with number 1, Luther, right behind me, the big boy, for those of you who can see us in our video cast.
So Luther in season 1, his arc is obviously, trying to cope with being the only person who stuck by his father, the person who stuck by him long after he deserved to be stuck by.
Yeah.
And then in season 2, he has a new father figure in what's the name of that real life gangster, Jack Ruby?
Oh, yeah, I think so. Yeah, or something like that. Basically,
Jack Ruby.
So what happens is they escape the apocalypse of season 1, and they end up in early 1960s Dallas. They all sort of pop out at slightly different times. So they've been there for like different amounts of time, and Luther's been there like for kind of a while. He's one of the first to come popping out, so he's sort of established a life.
Right. Well, he's working for the mob, and specifically the gangster who ends up killing Lee Harvey Oswald. So this season is a lot about conspiracy theories, which is why I was questioning you earlier, saying that it didn't have a dark worldview, of the world. First of all, not only are there the conspiracy theories that are so infused in the 1960s, but also there's the conspiracy theory overarching the whole series, which is that all of time is actually controlled by a shadowy organization.
Like a corporate capitalistic organization of some kind.
Right.
Though
Which
we're
I
not.
think there have been some accusations leveled at this show of some sort of mild anti-Semitism or some unintentional anti-Semitism, maybe, in that the handler at two separate occasions makes a point of speaking in Yiddish, and she is the head of this shadow organization. And also, as we see, there is a conspiracy to kill the president, which does involve aliens. Um,
Yes.
so I, I think that there is something to their obsession with lizard people, like, which
Yeah.
can have a kind of anti-Semitic bent to it. It doesn't
Right.
really stop me from enjoying the show, but I think it is an
No.
important critical lens to apply to a show so obsessed with conspiracies.
Yeah, and I mean, especially in our current age where, a lot of these conspiracy theories are, more than just like there were 7 people that shot Kennedy, and it's like, politicians are keeping sex dungeons of children when no, there are other like
Right.
people
Just,
doing that.
yeah, it's the
Like,
moment that we're in the QAnon moment. There are
yeah,
QAnon, candidates for Congress. Yeah,
right.
it's not good.
Yeah,
Um, but sort of getting off track from Luther, who I just again want to assure is just the biggest teddy bear
he
that you
is.
just want to hug.
The the weird thing in season 1 with him is that he's in love with his sister Allison. None of them are
Right,
blood related, but like they all grew up together. So it's weird and creepy.
right. And they share this like moment in a timeline that doesn't exist. So then you think like, oh, season 2, they're gonna finally get together, right? They've reconciled their differences. They're no longer angry at each other. Boom! That's when Allison gets married again.
Yeah. Uh we'll get to Allison when we get to her. But for now, like Luther, is basically working as both like kind of like a bodyguard muscle man, but then also like a fixed fighter at these like mob underground fight ring things.
Right. But the
The
whole point is that
underground
he's sticking
boxing.
with this kind of abusive father figure type guy, and he has to confront his daddy issues all over again,
Right.
which culminates in the season with him first confronting his actual father and being told that he's not good enough and that he would never adopt such an
Of a
unruly
son.
and gross child. And then
Yeah.
it culminates even further when he starts having daddy issues related to the older version of number 5, and I think that is the peak for his character, which I think does not bode well for season 3 and so on for him. That he is kind of going to become a joke character of like the dumb
Yeah.
guy, but
He's
honestly,
he's
I just love him.
it's fine. He's a himbo for sure. He
He's
is
got himbo
transformed.
energy.
But I think sort of on that note, one of the like I think his shining moment is definitely the episode where he's tagging along with both the younger version of 5 and the older version of 5,
Yeah,
and they're sort of like hanging out together, and like they're having like paradox psychosis or
yeah,
what have you, and he's being forced to like choose who to trust and which 5 to like kill or not kill, and we
yeah.
think
His
that he's
shining
gonna
moment is getting
succumb.
kicked in the balls over and over again by his two brothers, and then
Right.
ultimately separating them and then hitting them on the head so that they stop fighting, and
Yeah.
then
Well,
accidentally destroying the briefcase that would have gotten them home.
that's the other thing with this season is it truly is just a comedy of errors, and
Yes,
it's like delightful to watch,
absolutely.
like the other thing though is because the family gets separated again. I think this goes back to what you were saying about everything, sort of being a retread almost of season 1, but like slightly to the left, um, is like, you know, they start off separate and they have to like find
Come
their
back
way
together.
like back together, but
Yeah.
this time it's like a conscious choice to come back together, and they're the only thing that's pulling them there is, well, Five and the threat
Right, but
that
Five
another
was the one who brought
apocalypse is
them
going to
together
happen.
in some ways in the last one too, or who kept
Right.
trying to keep everyone together. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, so it's a
But
lot of the same
yeah.
same things repeating themselves, but in kind of heightened fashion because now we're in the 1960s.
Right.
Let's move on to Diego, number
Yeah.
two, real quick.
What a glow up, can we just say? Like, I was
I thought
not
he
a
looked
big
great in
Diego.
season one.
I mean, he looked fine, but his personality, meh, he just gets so much
Oh, it's too
more to
Batman.
do
But
here.
but I don't
He's
know.
way
Like
too
I kind of liked
Batman.
his mommy issues. Like that
Well, we
kind of
get
set
to
him apart
see a
from all
little
of the
bit.
other. Right. Well, but I mean, it
Yeah,
set him apart from all of the other people in his family in season
with their
one.
daddy issues.
Right. They all had daddy issues. He's got the mommy issue.
Yeah. He's like, no,
but
dad's an asshole, and I know that.
right. But in this one, he's still. They kind of switch to him having more daddy issues and having to be the hero in order to justify his trauma, which
Hmm.
is definitely something that I think a lot of viewers will find relatable.
Yeah.
But what I find interesting about this character is you have to give him a new love interest because his old one died. So if we're consciously retreading
Which
season
was the
one, we
mom.
right. Well, no, it wasn't the mom. It
Oh,
was
no, it wasn't. It was the
his cop
detective.
friend. Yeah,
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
the cop friend slash girlfriend slash ex dies, and so he gets
Yeah.
vengeful. But then we can't do that, 100% again. But we need to give him a love interest, so we give him this one, who Lila is just a retread of Leonard from last season in this like really obvious betrayal character.
I mean, yeah, but like she's so much more interesting than
No,
Leonard.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Like I said, everything's dialed up. But I
Yeah.
think it's interesting that we need to have another betrayer in the group to replace Leonard, who
Mm,
is dead.
right. Yeah,
Um,
Leonard being, for those who don't remember, Vanya's boyfriend, who's also a
right,
serial killer.
right. The creepy guy.
He's very creepy.
Um, okay, number three. Number three is Allison
Is that
or Klaus?
no? I think it's Klaus. I think Allison is five.
Okay, number
Yeah,
three,
Klaus.
Klaus. So he has to get over Dave and over sobriety again, but
Well,
but
he
in the
starts
most
off
dramatic turn.
sober, you
Right. I
know?
guess that's slightly different. He has a relapse in one episode.
Yeah. Well, like a couple episodes, but he gets clean again ish.
Right.
The timeline is pretty condensed.
But the interesting thing about Klaus being, I think he's the most departure from his previous season's arc, in that he starts a cult because
Yeah.
it's the 60s, and what do you do when you're from the future and you're living in the 60s is you just tell
And
people that the
you
world's
can
gonna end,
and
and
you can
then
talk to ghosts. Like,
of course he would form it's
yeah,
one of the most brilliant, like it might have even been the whole reason why in the comics and in here they decided to send them all to the
through the
60s.
60s. It's very
Brilliant.
good.
And it's all done in this montage to Sunny or Boney M's cover of the song Sunny, which is
Yeah.
it's an amazing montage. There's always at least one good montage in each season.
Yeah. No, they're very good.
But yeah, his arc is no longer about getting sober to see his dead boyfriend, but to try and convince his dead boyfriend not to die. So in essence,
Right.
confronting the fact that he's still not over the death of this loved one. So it's still the same
Right.
arc, but done differently.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, which sort of ties into Ben's
Ben,
arc, who is the ghost of their brother who died as a kid, has sort of like aged with Klaus, and gone along with him, um, and he gets quite an upgraded role in this season, wouldn't you say?
absolutely, he gets everything. He gets a romantic arc. He gets confronting his abusive family member arc, standing up for himself, getting over his biggest fear, which is passing on to the next world.
He
And
gets a
he
big
gets a double
hero moment.
sacrifice. He
Yeah.
literally saves the entire universe
Yeah.
and all of time and space.
He's legit. Ben's great.
Right. He's fantastic. But I think the idea of him being powerless, but actually all he needs to do is assert his own power,
Right.
even though he's dead, is a pretty powerful one. And then next season he gets to be the bad guy, which is
Right.
which
Or
is a
at least
brilliant arc.
alive.
Right. Well, at least alive.
Yeah. Which, leads to an interesting question of whether or not he was actually passing on in that moment, or if timeline shenanigans, but I
I
don't
don't
think
think they're
it's
ever going to really go into
conducive.
the metaphysics of
Right.
how
Like,
timelines function. Do they still exist in
right. Like
some?
that's a topic for the take video where they like Umbrella Academy season 2 explained Ben didn't
Right.
actually die there because really the
Listen, we
timeline
have
was
nothing
resetting, and
against
so
explained videos except
no, I
for
have
to
something
the extent
against
that we
explained
do.
videos.
It's
They
content for people who want to re-experience the content that they've just watched, which is also the reason why you would come here to re-experience what you just watched through our eyes. But at least we're providing, our sort of subjective takes and trying to
right.
provide new insight rather than just re-explaining plot points.
Right. The insight isn't like, this is how the plot actually happened and you're an idiot if you didn't realize it. Blah. The insight is, wow, it's kind of like season 1 again, but better.
Right. And
So
whether that's a worthwhile insight is completely up to you.
totally subjective.
Right.
There's no objective way to say, oh, you're an idiot for liking this podcast.
Right.
So take
Now,
that.
now, very interesting that Five in this season has to confront Hargreaves for the first time since teleporting to the future against his father's wishes.
Yeah.
So, like, he's always been, and I think, he said things like this in interviews, that Five is the person least, like, traumatized by his father because, first of all, he wasn't around for that long. And second of
Right.
all, he fully recognizes that, his father was right and that he had hubris in teleporting to the future.
Right.
Um, but I still think in this season, like, his arc is really more about, his dedication to his family becoming stronger and, not caring as much about, killing for the sake of good, for the sake of humanity or whatever.
Yeah.
What was his drive in season 1,
Yeah.
or self-interest maybe, but in this it's really all about, his family, protecting his family, sticking by him.
Yeah, it's very family oriented, and he does sort of do like, he gets like a one last job kind of moment that he does with the handler, and then gets to come back and be like, I'm done, I'm not doing this anymore, and she's like, yeah, okay, we'll see.
We'll
But
see.
I think since then he hasn't killed anyone. Yes.
Well, he sort of allowed the handler to be killed, and also all of the people with
I mean,
briefcases.
yeah, but he didn't kill them personally. I
Fair
think
enough.
there's a difference when you've been an assassin for decades of your life, and you
Right.
know you're now not actively killing people. I think you get a little point for that.
Definitely. You get a pass, whatever,
You
for
get a
me.
pass. Yeah.
Allison, do you want to talk about Allison?
Yeah, this season we talk about racism a lot, and I
Right.
think they do it pretty okay, but I also don't know if I'm the most qualified person
Yeah,
to, give it a pass or not.
I mean, we can at least judge it on the basis of like whether it is an entertaining and, engaging depiction of that particular time, and it's definitely
Yeah.
entertaining. Um,
Yeah, and I think I think props to the show for showing the importance of women in the civil rights movement, which is, often overlooked, the contributions of Black women to the cause. And I think having, Allison obviously herself being a Black woman and having to navigate this world one, as in the first year that she's there, she's still recovering from having her throat slit by Vanya the previous season. So, you know, she doesn't like talk at all for the first year. And like she gets to have really, I think it's an interesting dialogue about whether or not she should use her basically mind control powers to help the cause or not,
Right.
or
But
if, you
again,
know.
that's like the same issue that she was having last time as well, not being willing to use the power because of how it's not worked well in the past for her. And it didn't work when she was, you know, trying to help Vanya either in the last
Right.
season.
I
So
think
now
this
that's
season,
like the
though,
new trauma that's triggering her never using the powers.
I think that's definitely part of it, but I think this season really was like there was something a little bit deeper behind it. Like there was like a real like moral quandary about using it, in that, you know, it could potentially really help the cause if she was just like, you're not racist anymore. Like I heard a rumor, like you'll let black people eat here, and then like, whoa, equality. But she like, and like this is the part where it's really dicey, and I don't know like how, again, I'm not the most qualified person to talk about this, but you know, that the act of struggling and like trying to find legitimate ways to create this kind of social change is going to be ultimately more impactful than if she just like rumored everyone into this social change.
Right.
um
The other thing being that the fact that she can whisper in a cop's ear and make them stop shooting or, you know, or beating someone
yeah,
does make it really seem like she is an op from
yeah,
COINTELPRO,
yeah.
which is what I love about this season the most, is that these characters slot into the 60s so much better than they did even into 2019.
Oh yeah.
Um, although 2019 does feel very apocalyptic or pre-apocalyptic now.
Yeah. Considering the
So
year we've had in 2020.
I, yeah, it's kind of like a wild thing that, okay, yeah, also when they go back to the 60s, it slots in perfectly. You know, you've got, you know, a gangster,
Yeah.
a guy trying to assassinate Lee Harvey Oswald, um, a guy who's running kind of a leftist hippie cult, which is exactly like they're all of those cults were involved in some way, shape, or form with the CIA.
Right.
And then Vanya being this like super powered this
Queer.
super powered amnesiac living in the middle of nowhere who speaks
Yeah.
Russian and whose name is Vanya.
Yeah.
Like all of that is fantastic.
Very suspicious. And then of course, you know, Allison being involved in the civil rights movement. And you know, I think it makes total sense that she
Which
would
there
be.
were CIA ops
Right, right.
involved.
Yes. And you know, it leads to some conflict with her husband, where she's like, why do you have all these white siblings? Like
Right,
what, that I've
right.
never
Yeah,
heard
like
about
clearly these guys
before.
are all feds. Like there's absolutely no way that this Klaus guy is not a fed. Like
Right.
I
Like,
would be thinking that if I was in his position.
yeah, he was in jail, immediately gets out because of the governor. Like,
And then this humongous man, the size of it, like the Empire State Building, just lumbers in and just like, where's Allison Hargreaves? You mean my wife?
like it's
Oh
all
God.
very suspicious.
Yeah.
And you know, and it gets, so there's these Swedish
Right. Who are
assassins who
just
are
such a a retread of Hazel
Hazel
and
and
Cha
Cha-Cha.
Cha. But again, like I thought I was gonna hate them for being so derivative, but I did find myself like feeling for them once they
Yeah,
started like they're feeling the loss of one of their brothers dying and
yeah.
the Uga
And
for
just like,
Uga.
yeah, and just like how much they're just being played, and like how much it
Right.
sucks knowing that they're being played.
Right. And how it all comes back in the end
Yeah,
and ties up very neatly for
yeah.
those characters. When you don't think it will, you assume like, oh, they're all gonna die or they're
Right,
all
and then
gonna
you forget about the one who gets left by the end.
Right. It's
Yeah, and
brilliant. I mean, to make me care about three assassin characters named the Swedes
who
is a
mostly
difficult
don't
task.
talk.
Right. It's tough, and they do it. I don't know
Yeah.
how, But yeah, I think the retread aspect of Allison is that she gets married again and also has problems with her powers being something that she's not allowed to use in front of her husband. So that's like the
Right.
same arc as the first one, but turned up to 11 because now the husband's actually there.
Yeah.
And then who didn't we talk about? Vanya? Is she all
Yeah,
that's
we
left?
haven't talked about Vanya. She's the last, number 7.
Right. And so she gets a new love interest.
She does. Vanya gets a beautiful bisexual, well, I mean, this is just purely lesbian, but confirmed bisexual Vanya gets a beautiful romance that doesn't end in death, which, low fucking bar,
Right.
but like,
Although
hell yeah.
I will say that it completely did not work for me that
What?
she was able to go back to the future and just leave her behind because she said, well, it would never work out between us. That doesn't work for me at all. Like, she has absolutely nothing in the actual story tying her to that time period. And obviously,
But it
her
wasn't.
child would get better treatment in the future than he would in the past.
But here's the thing. I mean, clearly, this woman also just, I don't know, it works for me because she just suffered a trauma of, her son suddenly having magical powers. And then there's a bunch of time assassins who show up on her farm. And like 3 weeks ago, her life involved like being unhappily married and caring for her autistic
Right.
son.
But
Like,
honestly, I think that what happens immediately after this is that she gets arrested for murdering her husband. Like that plot point was never actually resolved.
I think, well, no, they do body removal. Her husband
Oh,
disappears.
right. But it's
Yeah.
kind of like a just wipe that up kind of thing.
Yeah.
It feels a
Yeah.
little rushed and it feels a little cheap because we've been building up this romance the whole time. And I just want Vanya to be happy.
I do just want Vanya to be happy, but I knew that they weren't going to go with her.
Right. But also, again, just like in the first season, there's an abusive male figure, even though it's not the person that Vanya is dating.
Yeah.
He's kind of a new Leonard as well.
Yeah.
Abusive aspects.
Yeah. The gay romance is wonderful. Helen is her name, right? Or am I remembering that incorrectly?
I don't remember.
Damn, I watched so fast.
She's just 60s lesbian housewife.
She's great.
Which I'm sure is a trope. 60s lesbian housewife.
I don't know. I don't know that it's necessarily a trope because usually
somebody
that trope
added to the TV Tropes website.
Well, because it usually ends in bury your gays, like they don't
certainly that, but it's a subsection of bury your gays that occasionally has a not bury your gays or whatever it's called when the gays live. What happens when the gays live?
Sissy, that's her name, Sissy. Right. Harlan is the kid. The kid was Harlan, which is where I was getting Helen, which is a name I have only heard from a British author with that name. So it was quite a wild. I don't know. It's a weird name, Harlan. Do you know anyone named Harlan?
So conclusions? Are we at conclusions?
Yeah. We skipped over a lot of the big plot points with the commission.
Right, because I didn't want to do an explained video.
Right, but I mean, was there anything with the commission plot points that stood out to you particularly? Like we sort of touched on what's Diego's love interest name that I've forgotten? Lila. Like, I don't know, I think Lila is fascinating.
Well, they similarly to the first season have a moment where Five leaves the group and then joins up with the commission and then does some stuff and then betrays the commission and leaves. And then also Diego then does the exact same thing at the exact same point that Five did it in season 1. Mm-hmm. So it's this weird, like, we're retreading even the same things as we're doing them. But I think the idea of stacking them on top of each other kind of works. The idea that, the handler is not the top boss, but has usurped the top boss's position is kind of interesting. Obviously, it wasn't in the comics because the handler is a totally original character. Mm. The real, head was always AJ Carmichael, the Fishman.
Yeah.
Which I like the Fishman. I've always thought that the effects in this show were really good.
Yeah.
I would have liked to even see more of young Pogo, the chimp
Yeah, we get Pogo's backstory, which is
Right. We get it just a little bit
phenomenal.
when he goes into space and then gets injected with the super serum.
Right.
But
And we find out why the mom is a robot. She's
right,
based
well, we
off of
find
a
out
real
who she's
person.
based off of, yeah. But that
Yeah.
doesn't really add anything because I think we
Figured,
knew
yeah.
something
She was
along those
based off
lines.
of a person. Yeah, but we get to meet her, which is an interesting experience.
And she's a Southern belle.
I mean, sort of.
She has an accent.
She does. I mean, there's your 50s housewife though, as mom from the original. I guess it's
Right.
different than 60s farm housewife.
Right. We have our
Um,
conspiracy theorist character who I think is kind of this version's donut lady, this season's donut
mm,
lady, who gets,
yeah,
sort of
but this
dangled as
time,
a, right,
yeah, he
this time
dies,
dead.
and it's sad.
Very sad.
Um, it is, but I don't know, like Diego, I just we didn't really talk about, Diego just wants to save JFK. Like he
Right.
just wants to
Well, it's the same
kill
as
Harvey
it's the
Oswald
same as
or
Luther trying to find the monocle, or Diego trying to track down the killer of his, dead girlfriend. Like,
right,
they all have these like individual quest
something to do.
markers that they have to abandon for their family. But I guess
Right.
the real thing that matters in terms of subverting the tropes of the first season was when
Hmm.
Vanya gets in the car and says, "I'm going to go save my hot lesbian housewife
And her
um,
son.
and her son." And you expect everyone to just let her go because she's, the outsider of the family, and they're
Yeah.
never really part of anything. But then one by one, they all get in the car. Even Luther with his fat
Yeah.
ass dragging the bumper behind them. And it's beautiful.
And it's beautiful. And I love what this season does with the relationship between Vanya, Allison, and Klaus. Like it's very segmented who sort of does what with each other this season. Like it's a lot of Luther Diego five, if Luther is around at all. And then there's like a lot of well, I mean, obviously Ben and Klaus are
Right.
literally
I think we get a lot
inseparable.
of I think we get a lot of decent
But
combinations. I don't think Allison never
yeah,
really hangs out with Five that much in season 1 or 2, but that's
no,
just a thing.
yeah,
We'll see if there's a season 3, which I hope there is, but
yeah,
if there's not, I think this had enough of, like you said, an equilibrium that
yeah,
even though it does end on a cliffhanger, emotionally I feel like we have a lot of resolution here that makes us feel
right.
like if it did end here, we would be able to find peace with it.
Yeah, yeah. So, like the commission is basically decimated and turned over to like this bureaucrat Hal or Hank or something.
A bureaucrat.
It's something like, yeah. But he's like this sort of delightful nerdy dude, who were like less terrified of being evil
Right, but
and
we don't know
doing
what's going
evil
to
things.
happen. We don't know what's going to happen with
True.
that, and
We
we
don't
don't know
know.
where anybody is. We don't know where any of the
Yeah.
other agents are, and whether they
Well,
survived the time skip.
a lot of them died in the
Right,
final
but they might
fight
not. They
on the
might be
farm.
back. They might be
Yeah.
back because time is different now. There's
Yeah,
no. There's
maybe.
no
I don't know.
telling. Who
What did
knows? The writers could literally write anything.
what was your thoughts on the conclusion, like the final fight where so that's the other big twist we get with Lila is that she is one of the 43 children
Right,
who
and she
was
can copy
born
anyone's
on October
powers.
1st. Yeah. Which like I think that's a very fun assassin power because she was
Right.
raised by the
It's
Handler.
something to kind of artificially. It's like the Deadpool ending of X-Men Origins Wolverine. Like, this is a character who can kind of do all the things. And
Yeah.
so being able to do all the things, it creates a very eventful final fight scene without having to
Right.
construct an entirely new villain with entirely new powers to
Yeah.
explain.
Right.
So it all works for me. I think it's a
Yeah.
cool fight scene, and it has emotional impact once they get her to heel turn, possibly.
Yeah, it's left a little ambiguous about whether or not she will, turn to the good side.
Yeah,
But
but she's
it's definitely,
family.
yeah, she's one of us. She's one
Yeah,
of the special kids.
you mess with one of us, you mess with all of us.
Yeah. I don't know, but like the end of it seemed like a very much like ending the cycle of violence was sort of the message of
Right,
the end of the season.
but at the same time, more violence yet to come,
Yeah,
caused
probably.
directly by Hargreaves as a villain, as opposed to a sort of nebulous uh, kind of evil force.
Well, see, oh, that's the other thing. With Hargreaves being literally revealed to be not only part of a secret conspiracy consortium who was plotting to kill JFK,
Right.
uh,
Well, he didn't
which
want
he
to do
didn't
it.
realize, I guess,
No, I
shrug,
think he knew it,
quite
but he
shrug.
just thought it was worth it. Whatever for his research. But
Yeah,
he is a lizard person
he's a
or
lizard
alien or
person who's
whatever.
got shit on the other side of the moon, and that's why he was always obsessed with the moon.
Yep, that's why he loves the
That's
moon.
that's why Luther was there, not
That's why he
just
was
to fuck
there.
with him. It's because he's an alien.
Yep.
Um, which like
Well,
I don't understand how that didn't come up after he died.
because it wasn't really pressing at that point. I guess yeah. When you go to the ghost zone where you can be contacted by Klaus, you remain in your disguise.
Well, I mean, Ben ages, so like, sure, why
There's
not?
weird rules
But
for the afterlife here,
yeah, but
and
like not
God is
even the
a little
afterlife.
girl on a tricycle.
Just like they did an autopsy on him to see if he'd been like killed, like murdered, right? Like I
Yeah,
don't know. You would
pretty
not
bad
you would
autopsy, bro.
you would cut into that. It just raises some questions about season one
Maybe
that you're
Pogo
like,
did the
what?
autopsy. I
Maybe
believe that
that
Pogo did it.
I would believe it too.
All right. Well,
Pogo's a
let's leave it
champ.
at that. We're
All
calling
right.
it. This
Yeah.
is the Umbrella Academy signing off.
Bye bye.